Order the Committee of the Whole, the Village of Villa Park Board, March 13th, 2023. Clerk Konecki, please call the roll.
Trustee Silella?
Here.
Trustee Corkery?
Here.
Trustee Kozar?
Here.
Trustee Kumar? Trustee Murphy? Here. Trustee Patrick?
Trustee Patrick said he's having a little car trouble. He'll be here shortly.
Trustee Patrick is absent right now, and President Kazone.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have two items on our Committee of the Whole meeting tonight. One is the WellQuest proposal, and one is Ecoterra. And we will start item 3A with Ecoterra. Manager Harline, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Kazone. The Ecoterra property is still is still under development. We're still waiting to see more progress. For tonight's discussion, we got Ecoterra first. Yeah. For tonight's discussion, basically what staff would like to present, and I'll have Patrick Burks here if you have any questions, is that we are close to obtaining the property from Hawthorne Development. The other thing is Hawthorne Development will be here at the next meeting, so they'll be able to take direct questions as to their progress. And then as you know, the RDA, which we have with Hawthorne, we have not enforced it as quickly as we possibly could. That, however, is probably not a good topic for open discussion. Other than that, there isn't a lot more of progress since last week, or 2 weeks ago when we discussed this at the February 27 meeting. If you have any other additional questions, we could take some questions. But right now, we still have a decent relationship with Hawthorne Development. We're trying to maintain that as we move forward. Again, close to obtaining that piece of property, which gives us an opportunity to have a little bit more leverage in that whole development process. So.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from the board? Trustee Kozar.
Manager Harline said maybe not a topic of conversation for this time or this meeting. Perhaps since this deals with the transfer of property, which would be that parking lot, we should consider an executive session so that we can discuss this in more detail.
There are definitely topics that could be covered in an executive session, if you wish to.
I think that would be good. We need. It doesn't look good off the street. Lots of residents have concerns, and the board just needs to be fully advised as to what's going on.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Move on to item 3B, the WellQuest proposal to purchase village property. Manager Harline.
So the staff is hoping to get some direction by consensus from the elected officials on how to proceed. We had the presentation that was made by the WellQuest company. They are working with Dial Corporation and others to purchase Union Pacific-owned rail stations. They're having mixed luck getting that done. One of the stations they're trying to purchase is ours. There are some considerations about the number of Metro parking spaces that would be left with their proposal. There are some concerns about height and some other neighbor concerns. Staff can work on these things as long as this is something that the board would like us to pursue. A first step would be to authorize us to do a appraisal of the site. We got a couple preliminary quotes today, and somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 to perform that appraisal, well within the village manager's authority. But I just want to see some direction from from the board before we start pursuing that. So we can talk, the staff can work with their staff. If we want to talk about a specific price or some other specific price, that can be done in a closed session. That's the one of the few things that we can talk about in closed session, something that would obviously completely change the ability of the village to move forward if we didn't do that in a closed session. So,
Thank you.
and again, Patrick Burke, our Economic Development Director, is here. If you'd like to further insight.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to bring up, I'm not against selling the train property and having it developed as senior housing. I think we see a lot of resident questions about senior housing in Villa Park, which we have very little of. We have a lot of seniors in Villa Park, and a lot of them seem to feel that they can't afford it as they get older. However, a 7-story building there, and where we're losing metro parking, I think is a big issue that we really have to discuss with the developer. I think 7 stories is extremely tall for that, especially with Ecoterra's building being 7 stories. That'll be blocking off a lot of sunlight for people to the east there. Again, I'm not against selling this property, but I think we definitely need to talk to the developer about some of the size of their property and what the village is going to get back in return. That's my opinion. Trustee Kumar.
That's two things. I agree with you on those two things, but there's a couple of other things. Traffic-wise, we are adding a kind of a different whole ethic to that neighborhood, which is all one way going through those few streets. There's always that traffic issue as well. So we need to deal with that as well, and we need to talk about a traffic study as well. It is a little claustrophobic, in my opinion, to have all those 3 buildings in that a corner. However, I'm not sure which buildings are getting built. I'm of course also concerned about Ecoterra coming up at this point. Seems to be at a standstill. So it may be a good idea to figure out what exactly is happening with Ecoterra before we just address everything at once, only because that's the same area. It might have some synergies to work together and kind of figure out a plan for that area properly with all these different parties.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Kozar.
I suggested at a previous meeting that perhaps Wellcrest and Ecoterra should have a meeting. I still think that might be a good idea, an exploratory conversation, and see if there's, like Trustee Kumar said, some synergism there, or synergy rather. Synergy there, you know, maybe there's some opportunities. In terms of the appraisal, I think we're kind of premature for the appraisal because we're not even at the point of wanting to sell it. However, if Wellcrest is serious and we're serious, I would propose to Wellcrest that they pick up the cost of the appraisal as kind of a good faith move towards what they want to do. I don't want to see Villa Park spending money on something that may or may not even come to happen. And I would say the same for a traffic study, potentially if it's coming down the road. But I agree with Trustee Kumar. We need to find out more as to what the direction on Ecoterra is. So I don't think I'd do anything at this juncture, but maybe wait till another meeting.
Okay. Traffic study definitely though would have to be done anyway. The developer would have to foot the bill on that to begin with. As far as the appraisal, that would be something, you know, maybe Director Burke can talk to them about that. And also, if they would be interested in talking to Hawthorne Development too. Trustee Kumar?
I also have a concern that we're getting involved in different projects that are not necessarily coming through and we have no backup. So last time there was an insurance bond issue that was discussed. I think we need to really revisit those bonds when we are getting involved with different developers. To make sure that the city is not left with footing the bill if, in fact, they walk.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've talked about, looking at the RDAs when those get developed.
Yeah.
Protect us a little more. So I don't know if we want to, go ahead, Manager.
President Kazone, one reason why we would like to get some direction from the staff is because WellQuest continues to ask us what direction that, are we interested in pursuing this or not interested in pursuing it? And one of the things I would like to get is just an indication that you are okay with us continue to have meetings towards the possibility of developing that site. Or we can tell them that we haven't made up our mind yet, but that was a request from them. They've been asking for a few months now what we want to do. So they made a presentation, and then I'm just following up to make sure that we give them
Sure.
if there's at least some interest on the board.
Okay. Trustee Kumar.
I certainly, I think I'm interested certainly in continuing the process of discussion with them. It's just, I think we need to put our cards on the table in the beginning so they kind of understand, where we're getting at, what we want, and what we need from them.
Trustee Corkery.
I'd also definitely be interested in pursuing this further. I share some of the other concerns that people have expressed here. Like the height doesn't bother me as much, but like definitely making sure that the Metra functionality is not impacted is a big one. There's some other ones, but I do like the idea and would like to hear more.
And speaking of Metro too, is the train station itself. There was some discussion when they were here about exactly where the station was going to be positioned once they knocked everything down. So, yeah, definitely would have to be part of the discussions with them. Just goes there.
I'm on board. I'm interested in developing that site if it makes sense and it's good for our community. It's not just the developer, but it has to be good for our community. And I think it's only fair to the developer to, as Trustee Corkery and Trustee Kumar said, let's lay it all out there, let them know what our concerns are, so they have ample time to address those concerns and work around them. Okay. But definitely, if that goes for Wellcrest or any other developer, if they have ideas and they want to come talk to us as a community and they can demonstrate how this benefits our community and gives more to the community than it does taken away from the community, by all means, let's keep talking.
Okay. Okay, anyone else? Okay.
I'm on board with a forward movement.
Okay. Okay, Clerk Kornecki, can we have a consensus vote on continuing our discussions with WellQuest to purchase the train station property?
Okay. Trustee Corkery?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
Trustee Salala?
Yes.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Kozar?
To be clear, we're moving forward on discussions, but we're not moving forward on an appraisal. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
President Kazone?
Yes. Okay, so we will continue our discussions with them, and definitely, Director Burke will make clear to them our concerns as a board. But, we definitely are interested in proceeding. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, public comments. Anything from the public?
Kind of sorry that the public comment comes after you guys make a decision, but I am a little surprised with some of you on the board when you didn't take into consideration of the public on that side of the town on how upset they were when you brought up Garden Station, and now you're putting another piece of property in the same area without taking their consideration of how they're upset about flooding and traffic and how this is going to affect them. Not to mention that I like the fact that they're speaking about senior housing, but they're not really giving you any control of the safety of that unit to the people that are in it, let alone where they're going to provide parking. I mean, a big part of Villa Park used to be people traveling downtown with it. I realize pandemic changed that, but that there was a lot of people that commute out of that station And now you're taking the parking out of it and putting buildings in their way, and there's going to be a huge parking effect. And no matter how you look at it, a huge traffic effect in that area. I mean, it's a great idea, but without taking in consideration the building of Garden Station, and now you're throwing another huge, I didn't realize that they were going 7 stories, building in that area too. There's going to be a lot of backslash for those poor people that live on that side, let alone anyone that tries to go down Ardmore in any time zone with all that extra stuff going on. And I know they mentioned, they sat here and said that they're only going to use a small amount of, 32 parking places. We all know that doesn't happen in this town. It's been brought up over and over again with new businesses coming in. Oh yeah, I'll only need a small amount, 2 or 3 parking places, and all of a sudden it blows up and they need huge parking lots that we don't have places for. So please take that into consideration when you're doing that, all the people on that side that it's going to affect. I know it's a lovely idea, but is it really the best for Villa Park to add another 7-story building over there? And speaking from the health standpoint, they can't control people going out of their building onto the tracks, so that will be a safety issue.
Those definitely will be issues that will be discussed.
Yeah.
That's, the Director Burke will be taking care of. Anything, Donna?
Yeah, Donna Knoxon. I just recently had to shop for places to put my mother-in-law. There was a beautiful place in Downers Grove that was 4 or 5 stories high, and they had a parking lot probably half the size of Jewel. I'm in favor of seniors, housing, whatever, don't get me wrong, but we all know it doesn't cost any money to go up. The one she's currently in is L-shaped, 1 floor, and it's beautiful. I think if it was scaled down and not 7 stories high, and the majority of the people that park there are the workers. They're not taking trains in. And it's not, and you gotta allow for visitors. But I think 7 stories is way too much.
Okay. Great, thank you. Trustee Slow.
I think it was kicked around by reducing the height of the building to an acceptable level. Their rooftop parking might be an option and get some of those cars off the street and out of the parking lot. So that's something we can look at when the time's right.
Sure. That'll be part of the discussions, for sure. Trustee Kumar.
I just want to address the public in saying that we're just opening up chances for discussion at this point. We're not actually signing on into anything, and we realize the concerns of the public in terms of safety, parking, and the other issues at hand with the claustrophobic area.
Can I just kind of do your homework and kind of look around at ones nearby and look at their parking? And the ones that are higher up require more parking. The ones that are smaller don't.
Sure.
So, if, trustees want to, on their day off or whatever, take a look. We shopped around, and parking will be an issue if it's 7 stories.
Okay, thanks, Don. Trustee Corpy.
I'd just like to take a brief moment to restate something. I've said this a couple times before. I know you're all probably sick of hearing it, but higher density developments are much better for the environment, and they are a lot more financially responsible from a tax perspective. And that is something I will be taking into consideration going forward on any developments that come before the board.
Okay. Okay.
One really, President Kuznetsov, we have mentioned to them that the 7 stories in our very early discussions would probably be, there'd be some pushback at least from the community. So they've been encouraged to look at other land in the area to see if they can get what they need. And so it'll be interesting to see what transpires as we talk to them further. Thank you for the direction. I appreciate that.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Kozar.
Since we've got basically, 40 minutes before our 7 o'clock meeting, committee of the whole, I'd like to see a little more just discussion back and forth on the board. So I've got a couple items that I'd like to just bring up that aren't up for vote, but things to consider.
They're not on the agenda.
I don't, what items?
So at the Coffee with the Board, one of the people who came, the topic came up about speeding in town and the idea of looking into the potential of those speed cameras. You can have red light cameras, but do speed cameras. I think it's worth looking into. I'm not suggesting that we do it or don't do it, but I'd like to kind of put that on the radar and maybe get some feedback from some of the other trustees if that's something that, might be of interest. Manager Arlen, I see you smiling at that.
But putting it on the radar, I'm sorry, it's just inadvertent pun.
I thought you'd like that. Well, maybe you could be speedy about it.
We'd actually read the minutes from the early draft of the notes, and I talked to Chief Rivas today about looking into that, so.
Great. That'd be nice to just continue thinking about, and if any other trustees have any input on that or just thoughts on that. I know the red light cameras aren't popular.
It's not on the agenda. We shouldn't.
I question, red light cameras, are sometimes more revenue makers than they are deterrents. And I'd like to, if we do go the route of some sort of speed camera, I'd like it to actually have a focus on deterrent as opposed to raising capital. So, early things to consider as we, maybe do a little homework on that. I have a couple other things, but I don't know if,
I just want to discuss this particular point. I think a lot of times you have those things that kind of just visualize the speed of people going by. We have them in Miller Park. I've seen them up at times. Putting those out, at least initially, kind of as a deterrent may be helpful to slow down the public to get it in their mindset as a start before we go for the cameras or any other kind of infrastructure change.
Yeah, we've put those out, and I think they work for a couple days, and then people just ignore them after a while.
Well, then it's going
It's
to
a
be,
good start,
it's
but,
kind of like this. If you don't have a camera that's going to give you a ticket, you're probably going to ignore it anyway.
Correct.
So do you want a full deterrent or not a deterrent? It's just, that's the way it is. So it becomes a revenue source at a point if you put those out, because that's the only way to actually physically deter people, I think.
Okay.
And am I against or for that? I'm not sure yet. I just feel like, we need to see how much and kind of do some due diligence in our kind of research before we do anything.
Okay. Trustee Corkery.
I really do not like the radar speed checks. I take a lot of convincing to support them, just based on experiences I've had with them. And it's very popular in the city of Chicago,
Oh,
I think, as
definitely.
a revenue source and not as an enforcement measure.
So how many tickets have you got in there?
One was enough.
Okay. Trustee Kozar.
to that point, Trustee Corkery, that's great. You said once is enough. Do you think that it helped kind of make you more cognizant of your speed when you got that? Or, did you feel that you were just kind of being picked on? Like maybe did it actually kind of slow you down?
No, I felt like I was getting picked on. The one I got was, it was a school zone. It was a speeding ticket, and I got it for being there at about 10 o'clock on a Saturday, so I was pretty upset about that. I would be willing to talk about it, certainly. I need to do a little more preparation and research, but just based on the experiences I've had with them in the past and talking to other people, I know they're not very popular, and I know in the city they abuse the system, I think, quite a lot to generate revenue, as opposed to legitimate stopping people from, say, speeding in a school zone.
Yeah, I think, in the city, they're in a lot of places that you don't expect them.
Yeah.
I think the idea in Villa Park is to actually slow people down, because there are a lot of the streets, I mean, you see it just sitting in your house, you hear them going by quick. Trustee Murphy.
Yes, I have a question for Attorney Wolf. Are we in order talking about items that were not posted on the agenda?
The chairman governs the proceedings, so if the chairman determines that it's appropriate to discuss these additional items, there's no official action to be taken at a committee of the whole, so it's okay to have these discussions. There is a provision in the code, though, regarding the agenda set for the committee of the whole, and if there's an official item that this board would like to add on the agenda for the committee of the whole, they should do that via a motion at an upcoming meeting of the village board. And that's in section 2-403 of the code. But since there's no action taken, what's discussed is appropriate as long as the chair, is governing these proceedings accordingly.
Trustee Patrick.
Thank you. Going along with the topic of conversation here from Coffee with the Board, talking about the speeding that has been happening, one of the residents asked, what is the process for asking the village to install a stop sign? I know that there are many levels that we must engage in, but can the village give a brief description if a resident thinks that that sign needs to be installed? What's the process for them, and then what's the process for the village, and then what's the process for the state to get that done? Also, it was brought up that residents would like us to utilize our Code Red system even more, especially pertaining to a lot of the emergency situations that have been happening in town. A lot of residents are seeing lights, hearing police activity, listening to police scanners, but not getting a code red telling them to either stay away from certain areas or what's going on. So the request was if we could utilize our code red system more for emergency services, letting people know what's going on.
I'll take your second item first. I know I have talked to Major Harline about that the last time we got together, and I think police and fire are going to look at using code red more often on these alerts. I don't know if you've talked to the chiefs about that.
I have. We could talk about this at the regular meeting during manager reports or something where Chief Rivas is here to speak for himself. But these are case by case matters, and there are reasons why they don't use them sometimes, and there are reasons why there are operational reasons for not sending out a notice. They can be used. I mean, it's used extensively right now by the Public Works Department because you can target it to a certain physical location, and so that's one of the advantages of using it. As it was originally intended for police or fire. So I don't. I can have him give his answer, but he's found that there's usually not, by the time they can put something out and get it in code red and send it and choose an area to send it to, there aren't that many times when it's appropriate to use it. For instance, if there's a car speeding through town, there's really you have no idea where they're going to turn next. So, I mean, I guess an incident like the one we had on North Illinois, I think it was a few weeks ago. I mean, you could argue that would be a good place to place it, but depending upon the time of night, et cetera, you might get more people interested in coming and taking a look than keeping away. So.
Okay, with that being said then, I think it would be appropriate and beneficial for the community or for the village to give the community an overview of the Code Red program and when and where it can be utilized, and maybe go into detail about some of the specifics about what you're talking about, why the police would refrain from using it in certain situations than others.
Okay.
What was your first comment? I'm sorry.
The residents were asking
about the stop signs.
What is the process from start to finish, and how does the state get involved with that? How is what's the involvement with the village and the state, and what's the involvement with the Traffic and Safety Commission?
It's my understanding that it starts with traffic and safety, and then the recommendations would get advanced to Public Works. And if Director Guerrero would like to speak on that.
Sure. A lot of times those requests do come in either through the village manager's office or Public Works, which then will be presented to the Traffic and Safety Committee, because that's the committee that is comprised to kind of review those requests. In terms of stop signs specifically, those are regulated signs, so a study has to be conducted because you can only install stop signs for certain warrants under the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Device Manual, or MUTCD, if you might have heard of it that way. And so certain warrants have to be met in order for stop signs to be installed. And if those stop signs are warranted, then the process would be to then bring it before, and Traffic and Safety completes that study, it completes that study, finds that there's warrants, that a stop sign is warranted at that location, then an ordinance is prepared and brought before the village board for approval. And then at that point, there's usually the 2 readings and then a 10-day waiting period before that ordinance is, if approved, in place, and signs will go in.
So the state doesn't have to be involved. It just basically goes through a study through Traffic and Safety. Once they make their determination, then it comes back to the board for a vote of approval?
Correct. All stop signs on our roads are controlled by the village board in our code. The only time the state would ever get involved is if it involves a state highway. Okay. Which at that time, usually they're making that determination and we don't have too much of a say. Our roads are so busy that any side streets would be stop controlled in that situation.
Could you tell me what some of the reasons for including a stop sign at a location, or what would be reasonable to put one in there? What are some of the reasons?
Don't quote me on all of these because I don't have them all memorized. But I want to say there's 7 warrants that can be achieved on stop signs, or either 4 for stop signs and 7 for stoplights. There's different varies, but majority of the time for stop signs, it's balance of traffic. If you have equal number of cars traveling on both streets in terms of a high density. If you have very low density of cars, if you have a few cars per hour on either street, you know, there's no chance of conflict typically. That doesn't meet it, but if you have a medium volume of traffic and it's pretty balanced between either 2, 3, or 4 lanes, that would be an indication that you need a stop control so that it controls the traffic through there. Sight distance, if there's safety concerns for sight, if you cannot see, and that control makes a dangerous situation, are kind of usually the 2 main. Sometimes pedestrian counts can come in, but it's usually based on traffic counts, sight distance, and some certain safety concerns. And that needs to be an engineered study. It has to go through engineering.
Would a school zone or a bus stop be considered one of those qualifications for a stop sign to be installed?
Typically no.
Okay.
Unless there's a high density, usually where you might see it would be a high density of pedestrians. So if you have a bus that unloads, like a transit location, it might be situations where you need stop control, but there's other control features that can go in, traffic calming, like the pedestrian flashing beacons, with a controlled crosswalk. It's usually, though, it's usually, I would say, heavily, mostly 80% of the time, depending on the volume of traffic, and then if there's sight restrictions, sight distance restrictions.
If a resident were to bring their concerns about wanting to install a stop sign at a certain location, it was brought to Traffic and Safety, however, Traffic and Safety found that it didn't meet those qualifications, will someone from the village or the Traffic and Safety Commission work with that individual to say what we could do to help alleviate some of the safety concerns in the area?
I think that's reasonable. We would definitely take a look, and if there's other things that might be warranted, we could review those options.
Thank you.
Well, at the request of Trustee Salela earlier this year, we did send through a request to make Addison and Jackson a 4-way stop. It was analyzed, and it was found, and also we did this in cooperation with the city of Lombard, or village of Lombard, because the other side of the west side of Addison there is in Lombard, and the study at that time showed it did not warrant a change in an addition of another stop sign to make it a 4-way stop. And that was, we waited until a couple of weeks after the opening of the new early childhood center. So that's an example that and those minutes, I believe, went, I don't know if they went to the board at that time, because there was no recommendation that was forwarded to the village board.
In that scenario, and I know trustee Sale was involved, so if I misspeak, I apologize. But 3 out of the 4 legs are actually in Lombard. Therefore, that intersection is mostly controlled by Lombard, and they did the analysis and found that it didn't warrant. So then they elected not to proceed.
Important details, thank you.
But I do believe there's been some talks with them that I think with the school of evaluating, and again in the near future if traffic picks up in the same street. So that was pretty early on, but that's kind of been an ongoing location throughout the years, especially since I've been here. I know it's been a topic of conversation, but unfortunately we don't have control. I should probably point it out. We only have control over the streets that we have jurisdictions on, which is the local road. So if it falls into Elmhurst or Lombard, while we might touch it, we cannot enforce or enact anything on their half of the road.
Going back to coffee with the board, the residents that had concerns on Beverly and Vermont that brought it to our attention, I believe we suggested they attend the following traffic and safety meeting, which none were in attendance, but on their behalf I spoke on it, and I was able to get it on the agenda as an item to look at to alleviate speeding, drag racing, all their concerns. So it is on the agenda for traffic and safety to look at. So if you're touching base with somebody on that, it's on the agenda.
Thank you.
Just Kumar.
I'm thinking a lot of the things you guys are talking about tend to be associated with schools and crossings near schools. And so I think we have to come up with some kind of solution for those areas to slow down traffic. So it's not necessarily a stop sign. It's something that, you know, we've got to figure out as a group that will work to slow down traffic near the school zones other than the posted. It might even be these you know, the cameras we talked about, because I think it's about speed near the school zone that is the most concerning for most parents out there. And many of the complaints that come from residents are in these school zone areas.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure, go ahead.
I should point out, just to make it very clear, it is written in the code that stop signs cannot be utilized for speed control. That's not the function of stop signs. And ideally, we don't want to put them up within people or ignore stop signs if there's no safety. So if it's a speed control, that's different functions that we have to look at. Stop signs are explicitly not meant to control speed on any given roadway. It's meant to control the access and the turning release of conflicting cars.
Which even more speaks to my point that we need to get to that solution. I think many people think the stop sign is a way to stop someone from speeding over someone or running down a kid. So that, you know, that may be, you know, we have to address that issue underlying issue more than just put a stop sign in.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Just goes there.
Dave, thanks for bringing that up to traffic and safety. And I believe traffic and safety is one of the new commissions that is recorded so people can see it from home. I think that's super helpful. So I appreciate that you kind of reflected or echoed some of the residents' comments in that meeting. Planning and zoning is also one that's recorded, and I think that very useful. We had some good kind of a interesting topic of conversation at the last planning and zoning, and I've kind of come to find out that a lot more people are watching that than certainly attending it. So I think that's very good, very open and transparent. I think with the new rec center that we've got coming up, I think that Parks and Rec would be a good candidate to have recorded as well. There's a lot of interest in town for Parks and Rec, and I think planning and zoning, traffic and safety, Parks and Recs are 3 very important commissions that many people are interested in. So I'd like to encourage recording that as well, and any input that any of the other board members might have on that idea.
Okay.
Does anybody on the board have any
Biggest thing with Parks and Rec is it's at Iowa Community Center. Those meetings are held there, and it's very difficult to set up recording there.
What, I understand Iowa is the, kind of the hub for Parks and Rec, and that's probably why originally they were put there. Is there any other reason that they're in Iowa, if they were to move here where it is more accessible?
That's Director Gola.
Good evening. No, we can move, certainly. It's not an issue for us. It's just always been at Iowa, but we can change.
And it makes sense. I mean, if that is kind of the hub of Parks and Rec, and there's no reason not to, you're having a meeting, it's open for everybody, but if it helps to kind of let everybody watch the meeting that can't necessarily attend, since you're up there, do you have any thoughts on it?
I would welcome the opportunity for recording. It's like Trustee Kazone said, it might be difficult over at Iowa, so we could probably move it over here.
Okay.
If there's time available on.
Yeah, maybe something to bring up at next commission meeting. Tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow,
yeah. Something to bring up. Okay. Trustee Patrick?
I also would be in favor of those meetings being recorded, and if it makes it easier to come here to the boardroom to do it, I would be in favor of that as well. I've also been contacted by multiple people, multiple residents that state an interest in wanting to go to Park and Recreation Commission meetings, but either have children, have other obligations, and can't make it. So having that YouTube video readily accessible allows our residents to be up to date with what is being talked about. It just adds a little bit more transparency to everything that's going on. So I would be in favor of the move here as well as recording those.
Okay. Okay. Sure, go ahead.
The only thing I would add is if there's a requirement of the village board to make an official determination in that regard with respect to the expenditures associated with those recordings or the contract with the recording contractor, and if we need to increase those amount of recordings that are authorized, the village should look into that just to make sure that the appropriate authorization and direction of the board is given.
Yeah, and according to the Suncom contract, it does allow us the opportunity to have those in there. It's just, it comes in expense, like you said. So I believe that would have to be voted on as an extra meeting. But again, what is it, $300 maybe to record a meeting?
Approximately,
so I think that's well worth the transparency.
Trustee Kumar.
I also have a suggestion as we're building the new community center that we make probably what will eventually happen with Parks and Rec. It seems natural to have those meetings possibly at the community center because that's why they're at Iowa right now. It must be a natural thing because the people who are there also participate in those meetings. In the future for that community center, we have a space that's easily recordable and we do not have an Iowa situation. So we plan for that.
Well, it's not so much having the space, it's having the equipment there.
It's the equipment, just,
I mean, all the
it's not
equipment's
that much equipment. You could probably set it up to record by itself in one of the rooms. It's a soft cost.
Okay, Trustee Murphy.
Yes, I just want to add one more comment, and that's that meeting also is conducted via Zoom, and will continue to do so to accommodate all of the commissioners, so I don't know what the impact of that would be with respect to videoing and Zooming.
Okay. It'd be something that we'd have to look at with Sunkiss. Trustee Kozak.
To our attorney's point, given that I think there's a meeting tomorrow, the director's here, our chairman is here as well, perhaps that's something that might come up in a conversation or dialogue in the meeting, and then I would like to see that, put up for on the agenda for our next meeting to have discussion, if we actually do need to vote on that.
Okay, well, yeah, like we said, they're meeting tomorrow, so Director Gola will discuss that with the commission. Okay.
The last thought I had was we hired recently a city planner, and we've also agreed to a large master plan for the village. And if not in this COW, I'd like to learn a little bit more about our city planner's role in that master plan. And I'm of the understanding, but I'd like to learn a little bit more, that the city planner somewhere fits in somewhere between community development and economic development. But if Manager Harline would mind speaking on it for just a moment as to how we're best utilizing the city planner, and is it a full-time position, and, you know, how that city planner will kind of be working with our master planning that's going on.
Well, and Director McLaughlin's here too. It's a community development position. They work on receiving plans as they come in. So they also have some front desk responsibilities. It's basically an entry-level, level 1 planner job. So they will have tasks in support of the comprehensive plan study, but the comprehensive plan is a contract. Obviously, we have a contract with Housel Levine to conduct the comprehensive plan, and the department will be supportive of that. But she does a lot of one of her tasks is to be liaison to the Historical Preservation Commission, so look over plans as they come in to make sure that there's coordination between zoning and code enforcement, as well as the Public Works Department. It's, but again, it'll be a great learning experience for her to go through the comprehensive plan process. But I don't know, do you want to add anything else to that, Mark?
Yes, good evening. Yeah, as Manager Harline pointed out, it is an entry-level planner position. I'm the face-to-face with the comprehensive plan process. So she's going to be my assistant through that process, but I'm the point person with Housel Levine, as Matt pointed out. But her day-to-day operations is a lot of over-the-counter customer service-oriented stuff. I'd like to do this with my property. What can I do? She's walking them through the zoning ordinance, setback requirements, heights, bulk chart stuff. I want to open a business. What zoning district is appropriate? It's a lot of that customer service orientation stuff that we didn't have that staff person previously. Yeah, that's her day-to-day, plus then all of the planning and zoning applications. So she's the point person for all those petitioners. She coordinates the reviews on those in conjunction with Public Works, police, fire, economic development, all the other parties. And she's the point to handle all that. And then, yeah, she's also going, as Matt said, to planning and zoning commissions, and as well as the historic preservation now. So she'll probably be the liaison for that.
Sounds like a great addition to our.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Side.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Good.
And she seems to have picked it up pretty quick from what I've seen.
Very bright. I'm very happy with my hire.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, seems we're getting close to our meeting. I'd like to get a motion for adjournment out of COW.
I'll make that
Trustee
motion.
Kozar, a second?
Second.
Excuse me, Trustee Slow. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We will re-adjourn our regular meeting at 7 o'clock. Thank you.